Very good.
Well, thank you. Welcome to another edition of Globespan 24x7, owned and operated by Mr. Singh. Tonight is Wednesday, of course, uh, July 13. We are discussing issues pertaining to Guyana. Tonight, the topic is on crime, security, and its impact. Protest and instability, its impact on crime, and in moving forward. So, with us discussing this very important topic tonight is the retired Brigadier General Mr. Norman McLean, well known in Guyana and region and in the diaspora as well, and Mr. Mike Singh, who is also a man of international. We've traveled quite extensively around the globe, particularly in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, and who spent considerable amount of time in North America, particularly South United States. I am Vishnu Bisram. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Taking busy time away from your schedule to join us to discuss this very important topic. Let's first define the problem, if you don't mind. Shall I begin with Mike? Would you like to define what do you see as the problem pertaining to
Vishnu, should I go ahead? Okay. Good evening to you. Good evening to the viewers and the esteemed, revered Norman McLean, Brigadier General, former Chief of Staff.
I don't like being quoted like that.
A man whose hospitality I enjoyed back in 2003 when I visited Omai Gold Mines and he laid out the red carpet for me. I like to spend more time with him and pick his brain because he, I think, has seen just about every corner of this country. He's in great shape. Whenever I see him, it's never a dull moment. I have immense respect for him. As I said, Brigadier McLean, I was reading of him since I was 11 or 12. So, like, he's been around forever. I don't want to ask his age. But
I don't have a problem. I'm 87 and proud about that.
He's an institution in his own right, okay? This gentleman. So, honored to be sharing the stage with him. Let's talk about the protests. The first protest we had in Golden Grove centered around the impatience of the residents over the bringing to trial of the perpetrators of the execution of an unarmed civilian, Quentin Bacchus. That led to the protest. They felt that the Office of Professional Responsibility was dragging its feet and they had to get out there and demonstrate their disenchantment, their despair, their disillusionment, and what have you. How in heaven's name that group moved from Golden Grove in such a lightning speed to Monrepo is beyond me. Where was the Guyana Police Force, aka the Keystone Cops? Where were they whilst all of these people were gathering steam and trust and momentum, moving from Golden Grove like a hurricane or a tornado all the way to Monrepo's market? Was the Guyana Police Force asleep at the wheel? Did they have good intel? Were they like suffering from lethargy? These are the questions you should ask. And when this group pounced upon the folks at Monrepo and proceeded to rob, to loot, to take what they can, burning buses, it was wrong. And I don't condone that. The same way I do not condone the Gestapo elements of the Guyana Police Force, the SS, the Waffen SS wing of the Guyana Police Force, going into these villages and shooting people up at all hours of the night with live shells and with ammunition. At this point in time, there needs to be an international inquiry led by the United Nations into what took place because blacks were victims and Indians were victims. It was a total meltdown of law and order. And this is something
Just
that needs to be addressed. Consequential to that, where are the idiots that staff the Ethnic Relations Commission? Where are they? You could
um, uh,
they have not
yeah,
issued a word. And that's what
yeah.
people
So
are
my
asking.
Yeah, before we get there, we're just defining the problem for now, and so just to give a little more background, so the
Sure.
protest started in Golden Grove
Yes.
and moved on the East Coast, and when
Yes.
it reached the village market of Monrepo, there were violence, and the protesters were largely of African, not largely, exclusively Africans, and in Monrepo, the market dwellers were almost exclusively Indians, and there was an attack on the vendors in the market with looting, violence, arson, several injuries, destruction of property, and so on and so forth. Just to give it that. I don't know if I agree with you, but I'll ask the general whether it was an execution. I'm not sure I will describe it in that kind of language. An inquiry took place, and it thought that the shooters of the young man who was shot, Quentin Mathis, there should be a criminal indictment, and that has happened. So let's get a little
There is a
input
criminal
from
indictment.
retired, please.
It's Major General, right? So, but
Yes. Oh, so it's
this was a
Major General, retired
this was a
Major
march.
General.
This was a march for justice. It started out that way,
Oh,
which is very nice, very laudable, right? But then what transpired along the way? We saw what was happening. It was not old tires. It was um, bridges, old cabs, and old truck bodies, and what have you. There you see a scene of tires, and so what was a justice, a march for justice,
right.
became anything but. And the question was asked by Mike, where was the police? This is not just down the road. This is a long distance. You go
Yes.
past Haslington all the way and more all the way down, and you end up you pass the police station.
Vigilance. Yeah.
Exactly, and nothing seems to have quelled what was going on, and it was just a free for all. And we reached a stage where you are at Monrepo, which is a market, and the next thing you know is that they're looting, robbing, and burning whatever you can. And this is lawlessness. That is all it was, lawlessness. Where was the national police? And I've been in the police force. I served over 16 years there. I was in the volunteer force before that, then the police force, because they were now trying to um, Guyanize the police. We were moving from white police officers and what have you. And so myself, Glasgow, and Roberts were the first three cadet officers, Guyanese cadet officers, to start to Guyanize the police force. And this was
Right.
before, as you know, this was just the police at that stage. The SSU came later on. The army came on by that time. By that time, I was long years in the police, and I decided to stay in the police force. And so I stayed in the police force. So I
Okay.
know something about crime because I was in the crime prevention squad. I've gone through a lot of this as well. Look at the burning and going on that's taking place. We had all of that in 62, 63, 64. I was very much involved, doubling as a riots unit and crime prevention squad. So I know what that is all about. So why would we have allowed this to go on all this time, all the way down the East Coast, for all the lawlessness that took place? Where was the police?
Okay, so you have defined the problem now, and you have posed the question. So it's a rhetorical question, I guess, that needed the answer. So you want to tackle it, Major General?
Well, unfortunately, as uh, a member of the Private Sector Commission, I chaired a meeting where I had the Commissioner of Police there, and we raised this issue and became very heated. So much so that I was chairing the meeting and I got up out of the chair and said, "Look, y'all better run it yourself," because I wasn't happy with how it was going. And so the commissioner was very defensive. He supported the police, but I don't think there's no defense to what transpired, in my view.
Could they have done anything to prevent
Oh,
the
definitely.
breakdown? And what would you have suggested?
Well, I believe we should not have allowed it to get out of hand to the point where it was. This was supposed to be a peaceful protest calling for justice. That's what it was. And to allow some people to hijack this process. And now we have lawlessness, vulgarity, burning, taking things off the side of the road, blocking the road, to the point where people coming from Berbice, for instance, had to turn back. And it reminded me of what happened um, at what's his name, the village, number 5 village on West Coast Berbice, where we had a similar issue with um, the death of the brothers,
Henry.
The Henry brother.
Henry brothers, right? So, I think we had a good chance to see how this could turn out to be out of hand. And we should have really put brakes on this and stop it from reaching that stage by peaceful means. Yes, you all have come to march. You've got a protest to make. This doesn't call for burning. This does not call for looting. It does not call for beating up people and tires coming out to be burnt. This is nonsense. And really, I think the police should have done a better job than that.
Just play the
I
devil's
served over
advocate.
16 years from a cadet officer to a deputy commissioner of police. So I know something about it, and I've been in riots and confusion and what have you. I have been a recipient of the Colonial Police Medal. I'm the only living recipient of the Colonial Police Medal from the Queen for meritorious service. So I know what it is like.
Yeah. Just play the devil's advocate. If the police had intervened, would that have triggered violence much earlier?
Well, this is one of the arguments that we were passing through ethnic villages, and we had to be careful, according to the commissioner, what we do. But I still don't think that there's what transpired. Eventually, they came
Mike?
along, the police coming out there, but they were doing stupidness, in my view.
Okay, Mike?
Yes, I think a great number of the police officers are wet behind the ears. They're very young. They don't seem to have had the level of training and sensitization that Major McLean would have had in his long and varied career. Um, Riot Control is not something you walk into Austin's bookshop and pick up a manual off the shelf. It takes a lot of training, a lot of restraint, a lot of assessment of the behavior of the crowd. There's a lot of psychology, I'm certain the Major General knows, that goes into dealing with folks protesting or in an unhealthy or unstable social setting. Um, I believe the police could have set up roadblocks at certain, or like, this is it. You have to stop here. Continue to protest, but you cannot go beyond here, and you must be off the road, let's say, by X hour. That should have been a curfew to get these people back off the road. But then the whole country is lawless in many ways. Um, how do you move forward? I've always said the only way forward is through dialogue, through national healing, through reconciliation and talking. And you know what? I said this in my last appearance on Globespan, and some members of the PPP's Guyana Forum responded to me with very unkind things. Take that we cast Gandhi message. Now, Mahatma Gandhi himself and Martin Luther King have all now become object of derision of people on Guyana Forum, and they're attacking them. And Mahatma Gandhi was a man of peace. He never preached revenge. He never preached an eye for an eye. He influenced Martin Luther King, who was able, through peace and nonviolence, to bring down Jim Crow era laws and promulgate the adoption of the U.S. Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, which today, as I've said, Guyanese immigrants go to the U.S., enjoy all the fruits of civil rights, but they were never in the struggle at Selma, Alabama. They were black folks. Then the other thing is, Mandela adopted the same message of Mahatma Gandhi. So I take great umbrage when the folks in the PPP-centric Guyana Forum start to attack Mahatma Gandhi. Because many of them in there, I'm pretty sure, if you peel the onion back, are rank racists. They're Indians, but they don't seem to know who Gandhi is. I doubt they've even watched the movie Gandhi. So you're dealing here with a hydra of sort: ignorance, institutionalized racism, a propensity not to accept the importance of peace. And if you can't come to the center and find some modicum of live and let live, all these foreigners are going to up and leave Guyana. If you ask a certain businessman, he called London to speak to Lloyd's and he wanted insurance on a project in Guyana. The people said, no, I'm sorry, Lloyd's will not insure the project in Guyana. We're seeing a lot of looting and burning. When I sent videos of this recent conflagration, for lack of a better word, to my colleagues, they said, what are you doing in Mogadishu? People thought I was in Somalia. Are you in Mogadishu? They couldn't believe it was happening in Guyana. I became very terrified. I was wondering if the whole country was now going to become a flashpoint and I should be heading to the airport.
Yeah, Mike. I'm not sure what that complaint was about Gandhi by Guyanese.
No, I take offense.
And whether they were
this is
advocating
part
a
of
peaceful or a violent solution. Clearly, there couldn't be a violent solution to the protesting. That's impossible. So in that sense, I believe people acted responsibly in not responding to the violence, because violence begets more violence. I'm not sure what it would have led to, but perhaps the police officers would have been in the best position. The government, the Home Affairs Minister would have been in the best position at that particular time of what decision to take, to pursue, what action to pursue, and so forth. Brigadier, I'm sorry, Major General, retired Donald McLean, agree, disagree?
Well, there are always two sides to this coin. I don't know if you all heard a lady by the name of Miss Garway, who lived at Beirut, and she was very, very forceful, very cogent, and very articulate about, every mother know your own calf and what have you. And she was very strong about y'all careful what you start, because if it gets out of hand, you're not going to be able to handle it. This was her attitude theater. She was very, very good. I listened to her. In fact, I think that somebody from the government or something should go and have a talk with her, because she said, look, I'll give him a name. I'm telling you where I live at Beirut, and if you want to come, you can come and kill me ready to death. This is the sort of thing that you have to be careful on. You don't want to start that sort of, conflagration going on. and people feeling so bitter about something which doesn't call for all of that. You know, her feeling is, look how long you all take. This is the next thing that I would like to talk about. What are the processes? Because that took a long time. That took over a month or more. And I remember when, in my time, there was a man by the name of Batson who I arrested at Manuel Fairbairn called Batson. And 11 of us were charged after the police themselves investigated our conduct, and 11 of us were charged. 5 officers and 6 other ranks were all charged with causing grievous bodily harm. And you know, but it showed that there was a maturity in the police force who could have conducted an impartial investigation of themselves and deal with, starting with McGill Smith, who was an expatriate senior superintendent in charge of Georgetown. He was charged, and others, including yours truly, we were all charged off the job for a year while this matter was being investigated. So, and being brought to the courts. So, you know, we have to make sure that we deal effectively with this, because what she was saying, look, that an incident at Maikoni Bridge where somebody was killed, and they were saying that, you know, they didn't take all this time, and why are you all taking all this time with this death of Bacchus? So I think that we need to look critically at what are the processes, and now we have layers. First is the OPR, the Officer of Professional Responsibility, has to do some work on it. Then it has to go to the Police Complaints Authority, which is where it then has to go before a recommendation is made to the Director of Public Prosecution for those charges to be laid. It took a long time, and so, you know, it made it appear as if, well, something was afoot, and this is why the people were restive and not, you know, just being peaceful. So I think this lady was very, very forceful, very effective, and I think she needs to be very well commended on her thoughts. So this is my view of
it. If I may point out, historically, when there is protests, when there were protests, ultimately, most of them led to some kind of violence, whether it was on Regent Street, and you mentioned earlier, number 5 on the Westmore Beach.
Yes.
Essequibo as well, and more recently somewhere else I can't put it off my head. Yeah. So, but we always have these protests, and the victims, generally speaking, happen to be from one ethnic group, and the protesters from another ethnic group. How are we going to address this problem? Why does this happen? How do we address it? Mike, you want to take a first bite at it?
Yeah, we need to bring people to the center. We need to tell them racism is a disease of the soul. I know amount of bloodletting, blacks versus Indians, Afro versus East Indians. You're all Guyanese. This is the common space. I don't know if the blacks are going to be heading back with the Yoruba brothers in Nigeria, or the Ashanti sisters in Ghana, or the East Indians here are going to be making the pilgrimage back to the Bay of Bengal and heading back to
Calcutta.
Bihar, because Modi's not going to take the backsides. He's going to tell him not here. Modi's persecuting Muslims in India. You think he wants more of these lower caste Indians, you know, arriving there? So they better come to their senses quickly, or administer nationwide shock therapy to bring everybody to the senses. This is it. You have an opportunity. You have hundreds of billions of dollars of oil and gas offshore. Try and wake up, behave yourself, come together, let the past let go, look at each other as brothers and sisters in humanity, brothers and sisters in the eyes of Allah, right? That's what you need to look at. and find a common ground. Okay, it happened, but we can't go back to the 60s. They keep harping to the 60s. I wish I had a time machine and I could travel back to the 1960s and see all this violence and bloodletting and bring some of them along. It seems that politically Guyana is yet to mature. This place is a victim of arrested development in terms of the body politics. And it will take like the Martin Luther King Center, the Gandhi Center for Peace and Nonviolent Change to come here and bring people together. Because if you can't manage your affairs, the Venezuelans are going to grab Essequibo, the Surinamis are going to take the New River Triangle, and the foreigners are going to milk every oil well they can, and you're going to be left worse off than you started out. So you need to come together because a house divided against itself will not stand. And whilst you're busy killing each other, your enemies are capitalizing on your national discord and and zero unity. So it's important that everybody realize you're only 750,000 people in an area the size of Idaho. Come on, there's more than enough land. I don't know if some people just want all the wealth. Are we going to be disposing of some of these denizens like pharaohs, burying them with their ill-gotten gains? You know, well, I always come back to Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, to be thy brother's keeper. And nobody in Guyana should be going hungry, should be a victim of social underdevelopment. It's wrong because there is so much to be done here in terms of development. But you know, as I said, the devils find work for idle hands. And if you can train these young people, send
Well,
them to the Exxon Training Center
talking about
or
training,
bring back the National Service, which I
that's
think
where
you
are. That's
you
where
had
we
a
are.
hand in that and it worked. I support bringing back the National Service.
Okay,
You
so
know, you don't have to,
just
you don't have to sell
just
that idea because I was the founding director general of it.
Yes.
And it was doing wonderful work. And now we have the Ethnic Relations Commission, which is a non-functioning organization because it's not appointed for the longest while, over a year,
Why?
not a functioning body. Why, I don't know. But
You were on it before, right?
yes, that's right.
You're chairman, I think.
I was deputy. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, so, but
Major General, Mike Singh essentially said racism was one of the factors that normally led to ethnicized violence, violence that followed protests. What's your explanation for violence against Indians after a protest or during a protest?
I didn't get that.
What's your explanation for this kind of violence usually after a protest or during a protest?
Well, this is
In
a
our
good one. I mean, this is the one I was thinking. We have a march for justice. That was what it was supposed to be, but it didn't be. It didn't grow. It grew into something else, where we were burning anything, and then end up looting, and this race then becomes an issue immediately. And this is uncalled for and totally unnecessary. Within, we live at peace normally before elections. Normally, this is the sort of thing you get at election time. But this seems to be a continuation of post-election problems. And this is totally unnecessary. I really flabbergasted that we allowed this to go with. And really, the police, there's something called the community policing organization, and the police are trying to do some work with young people. Those are commendable, but it has to come off as reality and overcome the issues which we are facing at the moment. As I said, I've years with the Ethnic Relations Commission, and we did a lot of work, but now it's up. Nobody has been appointed, and it's floundering, and it's no longer there. So this was one of the means, and the National Service was another one which we could have started the process of having this new Guyana man and to overcome all the racial issues. I was in National Service as a Director General. We were training people, and we were training in culture, and it was going great guns in my view. I don't know what the hell went wrong, but it certainly has not borne the fruit that it should have been borne. And I think the feeling is that we don't need it anymore. I think we need it a lot. Any other issues you?
Verification purposes, Mike berated supporters of the ruling PPP for certain position they took during or after the protests, which probably didn't coincide with the position taken by the ruling party, which is that to take a moderate response, a responsible response, that will not exacerbate the problem at the particular time. Do you think the PPP took addressed the matter effectively at the time?
You're directing the question to me or to the Major General?
Well, was really the question if the PP did what?
You see, the Mike was really excoriating supporters of the PPP for the position that they were adopting or proposing or positioning, which was in contrast with the party's position. The party wanted to wait and see, watch, and not take measures that would exacerbate the condition at that particular time.
This is the Bacchus issue.
Don't you think? Yes.
The police dragged their foot on it. I don't see the party getting involved in that. This is a simple police matter. It's the same matter like the one at Siquibo.
And it had nothing to do. It had nothing to do with the government.
Not at all. They took too long to complete a simple investigation. In my view, it's not a big issue. It's not rocket science. And once we have some investigators, I think it's something you could wrap up in a week or thereabouts. As to whether he was in close arrest or open arrest, that's irrelevant in my view. He should have just been charged. That's it, as he was eventually. But it had to take all this unrest and violence and confusion to bring it to that point. And that is a police drag their foot on that one.
But there was also irresponsible reporting by the media, wasn't there? When social media said that the police officer was being released, when in fact that wasn't the case.
Yeah, well, everything where we've had problems has come with a rumor. That was the rumor that this man was released. In 1962, a child was killed outside the electricity corporation, which led to all the burning and thing or whatever. And every time we've had rumors have driven our conduct and the way we've done our things, which is bad, really bad. So it just takes a little spark to ignite these issues based on rumor or gossip or whatever. So we need to get things right. It took too long, in my view.
Mike, media was irresponsible?
Well, there's so much misinformation on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you know, social media. It's got its goods and it's got its bads. I mean, the last U.S. election when Trump won, Facebook and was it Analytica, Oxford
Trump,
Analytica.
Trump
They,
won his,
no, when he won the first time.
oh, the first time, okay.
Yeah, Oxford Analytica, shaping the public's view. I mean, look, I don't have a Facebook account because I know the dangers of data mining. I'm not even on LinkedIn. I work in this sector. I work in big data. I work in analytics. I work in artificial intelligence and telecoms. I don't have because I know they mine your data, they track you, there are algorithms out there. I never go onto the web unless I use a VPN. But social media, the people there can literally bring the population of a developing country to blows. And then, okay, I've heard some things, shut the man down. I read this on some blogs. Well, it's not easy. The US is a democracy. Call the State Department and get the website shut down. But Mr. Blinken is not going to pick up the phone and call the chairman of Google and said, shut this site down, take this off of YouTube. Do you know why the Guyana government has failed to win any cyber cases? Because they're cheap and they're inexperienced. They will not go into their pocket and retain a top law firm in Silicon Valley that can go head to head with the behemoths. You think the government of Guyana has got the cojones, as they say in Spanish, to go against Google and Facebook? Let's get real. That is taking a knife to a gunfight. It's like showing up at the gunfight at the OK Corral with your grandmother snap a knife. You're not gonna get far. So companies like Google, companies like Meta, which Facebook is part of, companies like WhatsApp, which is part of Facebook, they've got entire legions of lawyers and people there waiting to deal with you. And for locus standi, let me say to the Guyanese public and the diaspora public, the unlettered, that the servers are resident in the United States. So they're not just going to hand over under US privacy laws data to some banana republic in South America. You will need to appear before a properly constituted court or a federal circuit judge in San Francisco. Have all your briefs ready to present. And if you don't have a tight case and you go before the judge, trust me, Google and Facebook are going to come to get every penny in your sovereign wealth fund. They don't play. They're serious. Elon Musk and Mr. Jeff Bezos, what they spend in a day, the government of Guyana don't spend in a year. So, as I say, they talk about cybercrime. Don't go to a gunfight with a pocket knife. These guys are huge. Look at their earnings.
Right.
So we're talking about protests and crime. The protest itself now led to a crime. So we had a crime that led to a protest, and the protest itself have led to other crimes. How do we address those crimes?
To me, all of this comes back to race. I don't know why. Because really speaking, I have worked in the police force with both races, no problem. I have worked with, in the army, and I've worked in the ethnic relations and these people. All of them issues were related to crime. And we need to have a much more effective ethnic relations commission, which is all the time taking the fight to the people who want to use race as a weapon and to overcome all the nonsense that I'm seeing now. So, I think we have to have properly constituted Ethnic Relations Commission to fight this issue about race and racial division and all the problems we're having, right? So, in my view, the answer is to have a properly structured Ethnic Relations Commission, which is dealing with the issue of race. I remember we had some people coming from South Africa who came to study and to talk with us about how to overcome some of the issues surrounding racial violence and crime. So, this is how we will address it. In the long run and in the future, I think we have to use our young people. And this is where the National Service came into being and should still be in operation to try and bring young people together, working together to overcome some of the problems before they became, epidemic or endemic because, you haven't addressed that. So those are some of the two issues I would like to see us look at. Huh?
Okay, so Mike, protest led to crime. How do
Well,
we deal with that kind of an issue?
well, you can't stop people from protesting as long as there's no violent attacks on innocent civilians. It's part of the democratic process. It's enshrined in the Constitution of Guyana. And if you were to remove that right to protest, we might as well say, welcome to the police state and 1984, an animal farm all over again. So I don't think any government will want to violate the Inter-American Democratic Charter, which is part of the OAS and to which Guyana is signatory, because Guyana could very much find itself in the unenviable position of South Africa apartheid era. I don't think Guyana can stand the consequences of being branded an apartheid society. It would do your economy in. I'm telling you, very bad. And the person that the learned Major General alluded to was Justice Albert Sachs. Albie Sachs visited Guyana in the 90s. In fact, he was a member of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of South Africa, which the late Bishop Tutu chaired. Albie Sachs, I think, is still alive. I met him 2 times in the past during my visit to Cape Town. But, you have to allow freedom of the press. The fifth estate or fourth estate is very important. You can't clamp down in the media because then you'll be called a dictatorship. You can't use the power of the state to muzzle anyone because now, you're going to be seen as being barbaric. You're no different than Putin, who usually likes to use, some kind of radiation therapy to get rid of, for lack of a better word, to get rid of members of the media and those he perceives as his enemies. And you certainly can't just lock up people. I think the relationship between civil society and this government is going downhill, and the government needs to pull in its hacks and its henchmen and war dogs and tell them, look, we need to be respectful of civil society in the media because everyone needs to be on board, Vishnu. A society that is not stable and that is not predictable and is not secure, investors are not going to come. You can have all the oil and gas. A lot of them going to say, you know what? We will support what we have to do from somewhere else. The oil and gas is not onshore, it's offshore. So we have a lot going for us with the local content legislation. We have a lot going for us with the economic momentum we're having. But investors look for a place that is predominantly safe, secure, and there are no violent swings of the pendulum. And I'm certain the learned Major General will agree, being in the private sector commission.
Right. So protests not only lead to crime, as you said, there are other impacts as well on investment and local economy.
You know
and so
what
forth.
creates crime? When people are poverty stricken, when they don't have an opportunity, when a man is forced with his back against the wall. As I've said, you can't have 95% of a nation's wealth in 5% of its citizens' hands and expect 95% of the people to subsist on 5%. You're looking at a recipe for disaster. You know what led to the Arab Spring? It wasn't the man who wanted $1 million. He said, I can't afford to eat. And he immolated himself. He poured petrol and set himself on fire. And you had a falling domino effect, which Major General is familiar with that term. It led to the collapse of Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, collapse of the government of Tunisia, collapse of the Muammar Gaddafi was treated very unkind by the very people he collaborated with, right? There was no need to remove Muammar Gaddafi. I tell you, when I was in Africa and the Sahara, people praised him. But we need, if you don't...
We may have to go on a break now.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll let you finish that point. Devin, you ready?
TravelSpan has some very cheap fares for July and August to and from Guyana. Seats are limited, but call TravelSpan today for these discounted low fares in July and August. In New York, call 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. In Georgetown, call 227-1701. That's 227-1701. And in Berbice, call 337-4287. That's 337-4287. For discounted airfares to and from Guyana, call TravelSpan today.
Is when this wedding got done? Right now my belly burning for the 7 curry. But them fancy people just call it vegetarian food. I just call it 7 curry.
Order your 7 curry or vegetarian box today from allfromonesupplier.com and get free shipping throughout the US.
Oman! Hey, Oman!
Oi!
Come that girl, I feel like I see Raymond Ramnarine across the road somewhere there.
Raymond who?
Raymond Ramnarine, the singer girl Ramnarine, how you quitting so?
The 2022 TravelSpan Curry Duck Curry Cooking Competition is in Cancun on July 28th to August 1st. Who is going? The duck and the curry going for sure, plus Raymond Ramnarine, Terry G, young upcoming dancer and singer Ariana, Randy Reckless, and the Reckless Tassa Group. The competition for the best tasting duck is in Cancun for 2022. Friends and families, make this a reunion. Flights available from New York, Florida, Atlanta, Texas, Trinidad, Guyana, Canada, or any U.S. states. For more info, call TravelSpan at 212-243-0865. In Canada, call 647-557-6200. In Trinidad, call Amirals at 645-1604. And in Guyana, 227-1701, or visit us at travelspan.com.
So, welcome back again to Globespan 24x7, owned and operated by Singh. I'm your moderator and host tonight, Vishnu Bisram. We are discussing protests, crime, and moving forward in Guyana. With us tonight, 2 very distinguished guests, retired Major General Mr. Norman McLean, and international diaspora commentator, intellectual, Mr. Mike Singh. Just before the break, Mike was making a point about crime in Guyana and what led to protests and revolution in the Middle East and other societies. But I don't want to touch that topic right now. What I'd like to address, if you gentlemen don't mind, is what's the role of our local politicians in these protests as well as in the violence. Major General, you serve both in the police force, in the armed force as well, and in national service. I'm sure you would have had extensive experience in dealing with politicians and their role in orchestrating these kind of protests, if indeed they did play a role.
Well, I don't know. We're supposed to have an opposition. We're supposed to have a leader of an opposition. And I think we have to be more effective where those people are concerned. They can't just look to instigate and I'm wondering sometimes, can I see how these protests took place, coming from, all the way from Golden Grove, all the way down. And it seemed to be a lot more convenient for a lot of the violent destruction which took place. And it wasn't a happenstance, in my view. In my view, as a former police officer for a long time and an army officer, this seems to be a little too orchestrated. And I think we need to look critically at how that came about. The other issues I wanted to just address is really the national service, and secondly, a lot of fireworks. I don't know what that's for.
Before we address that you're proposing as a solution to the problem.
Yes, that's right.
So let's hear. Let's hear from Mike first of what is this trend of thought about the role of politicians in the protests and in orchestrating violence.
Well,
particularly this.
I applaud the president for showing up. He had a lot of guts and
Yes.
commitment, and he showed some empathy. What I could not understand, I read
him more than empathy.
Yeah, and he gave them money, and some people milk the system. I read somewhere, I don't know which gospel, an egg ball vendor claimed she lost $3 million. The government, I believe, was offering cash grants of 100,000, and some of the vendors said that's too little. We need more. I think the people who were looted became extortionists in the process. So you have to guard against that. I think the president himself erred in not going to Golden Grove. He should have done that, because he's president for all of Guyana, and he should have gone to Golden Grove rather than just dispatch Mark Phillips.
I don't agree with that. You mean the president has to go to every incident?
But he has to show.
And everywhere. Not
He should go. I mean, he should at least go now. It's never too late. He went with the Henry boys.
No, but
this thing is,
there was no way he
look, the protest took place. It's past. Let us not regurgitate in it. Let's find a solution. Let's move forward. I think a lot of those people who grabbed the food items were very dirt poor. They were desperate. Maybe they don't know where the next meal was coming from. But that was no reason to do what they did. And, as I said again, both sides have their own demons. And, I read Aubrey Norton saying to young people, do not beat up innocent people and rob them during protests. But he should have been proactive in responding the moment the protests and the violence started. So that's a black eye for the PNC, and they need to work on being more responsive. The action is not at Bam Bam Alley. The action was on the road, and he should have responded in the affirmative to say, look, whilst we welcome peaceful protests, we don't support attacking innocent civilians and so on. And the PNC, they have slip was showing, they failed. I mean, to be honest, is there effective leadership at the PNC? That is a question I beg to ask. That it's not the PNC of Desmond Hoyt. People are even making fun of Aubrey Norton and saying the man is Granger 2.0. I mean, if someone was saying that about the leader of the opposition and I was the leader, I'd be very concerned. And I can say this openly, I'm not a member of any political party in Guyana. And what I like to say, the real thing is that if these people had jobs or any meaningful purpose in their life, you think they'd be running helter-skelter down the length of the East Coast Highway from Golden Grove as far west as Mount Repose? I mean, that's a hell of a distance to cycle, walk, or run with 50-pound bags of potatoes. I mean, the whole thing it's kind of unfathomable. Where if they had jobs, they wouldn't be out there, and that's why we need the national service. I'm hearing about a One Guyana initiative. Why isn't there a One Guyana initiative secretariat with meaningful and purposeful solutions to people? Yes, it's just an empty anthem, an epithet. This is just like when Adolf Hitler used to travel around Germany and issuing
some of the things you said.
We need a national service right now.
I agree with national service, but could I ask for the leader of the opposition to be more open? And I don't know, I would have liked to see him at some of these functions. I don't know whether he's been invited and if he just does not turn up. But we're having big national events looking at the gas to shore operation where everybody was invited at State House. The leader of the opposition should be there, in my view, and should be made to be a part and parcel of these programs, which are of a national nature, some things which are very important for the future of the country. And so I would like to see him be part and parcel of that, and to be more effective and not just being anti and being, against the government. Let's work together. We talk about One Guyana. Let the One Guyana include the opposition so that we get them to move.
Absolutely. Vishnu, one of the things I found odd, come on, you're the leader of the opposition. The president comes in, he extends his hands, you don't shake it. Is that how low you have to be? You could be human, you could be humane, you could display some magnanimity, you could display some maturity and say, hello, Mr. President, good afternoon, how are you? Thank you for facilitating us. That was wrong, not shaking President Ali's hands. I think he could have done better there.
Yes.
And you think that also could have been one of the factors that led to the breakdown of law and order during the protest?
I think if we shook the president's hand, could have shown, look, I come here, there's no ill will, I don't have any pent up thing, it was a hand of friendship. We're all Guyanese. Let's sit down and find a way to fix this problem in a mature manner where we put Guyana first. But none of the political parties seem to understand what's bigger than them is the future of this country. And people are looking for leadership. And I always say, if you want to be president, you would start looking, sounding, and acting presidential. And President Ali has been going around. He's been conciliatory. He's been giving a very positive message. He's
Yes.
been reaching out to people.
Yes.
I could never say any of his speeches. He talks about hatred. He talks about bloodletting. No, he's talking about the future. Irfan Ali, in my opinion, I'm very impressed with the way he's grown in this role. And globally, the response he's getting and the way he's delivering the message, the way he's speaking, in many ways, it kind of reminds me of Václav Havel, the Czech leader, or the author of the Velvet Revolution. You don't see Ali talking, looking back. He's always talking about moving forward.
Forward. Right.
And that's good. He's talking about a gas to shore. President Ali is talking about the new roads. He's talking about agriculture. He's
Yes.
talking about Guyana being this breadbasket. You and I met at the Agri Investment Summit, and I was so happy when I saw him and Vice President Jagdeo and everyone saying, look, we've had enough talk. We need to walk the talk. I mean, it made me feel proud because Guyana, we always hear of being the sleeping giant. But here you actually had two persons who are actually challenging the rest of the region. So, but we are not going to get there unless everyone is on board. And we need
Okay,
every
so
person on board, right, Major
Including the
General?
opposition.
so
Including the
you've begun
Of
to address
course.
the point which I wanted to get to, which is how now move forward. So let's hear from the general since you have already spoken.
So, well, I've
Major?
already indicated to you the Ethnic Relations Commission, because we have to resolve the problem of race in Guyana. Whether you like it or not, this is always going to be an issue which comes back to bite us. So we have to overcome that. This one Guyana, yes. One Guyana, yes. But let's get as we did and started, the new Guyana man who is not a racist by any means, who does not recognize Afro, Indo, and all this nonsense that we're doing. We are Guyanese. So this is what we need to regenerate through a new national service approach, in my view, or whatever you want to call it, right? So that's one of the major issues. Ethnic Relations Commission must also play its part. We have to reconstitute that to ensure that we address all the issues that are affecting our racial disintegration, I call it. So that is very, very important. And as I said, we need to see the leader of the opposition and the opposition as part of the government, and we want to see them move forward with the government through the One Guyana or
I have a question which I'd like both of you to address. Do you think the attempt to steal the election, to rig the election from March to August of 2020, not play, but set for these kind of violence that took place in September 2020? Then there was the other one in Essequibo, and then another one in West Dem somewhere, and now this one. Rigging, any role as a precursor to this kind of racialized violence? Right?
Well, sometimes you sense that, how could this be instigated? How did it happen that the police went and effected a raid in Essequibo and ended up with the man being killed? How is it that this young man on the East Coast ended up the same way? And there are many other issues of that nature. And sometimes I wonder if we're playing Russian roulette and problems for ourselves, because how we could avoid these issues. Race cannot continue to be a problem for Guyana. I mean, we know what Douglas is. We know what is. My wife is Indian. I really ain't got time with this nonsense about racial visions and yeah, you, yeah, me. You know, we went past that in 62, 63, 64. We've gone past that. It's time now, at this stage, for us to have mended all our issues, especially if we had continued the national service as we should have, because you know, we had a great cultural and other issues which addressed all these issues of race. And when I was with the Ethnic Relations Commission, this is one of the issues that we addressed constantly, and we are bringing it from South Africa and all about
Albert
those
Sachs.
help us, you know. So we have to continue that role, and this is not something that we can do overnight. This has to be a continuous process where over time this.
So, Mike, rigging
Well,
the precursor.
any attempt to rig the democratic process is unacceptable, and I'm on record for saying David Granger belongs in a bottomless pit. Right? I've said that publicly when they were protesting and they attempted. I mean, even they wanted to steal the election. It was an exercise in stupidity. They just didn't have good, bright people. Forbes Burnham would never have employed such idiots, you know. But they lost the elections, man. Come on.
Get down with it.
They-
Why
they-
don't
they-
why don't tell the US that?
And the
You
refusal
them
to accept.
that, no?
And they need to accept the reality and move on. And what made the whole thing worse is with this sheet recounting Mingo, Pingo, and all kinds of blatant attempts to insult the intelligence of the world. And then when they're caught red-handed and the SOPs, look, you know, okay, you know, you could have at least take your licks with dignity and withdraw and save face and at least try and come back again. You know who did in the PNC? It's not the PNC, they did it in themselves. It's that idiot David Granger. He should have never been the leader of the PNC. He is the worst thing that could happen to the PNC, David Granger. That man, I think he had a suicidal mission of decapitating the PNC. He did more harm to the PNC than the PPP did.
Started with my classmate, Mr. Patterson.
Well,
You know, and
the election,
and people, nobody trusts them. You know how difficult it is to rebuild public trust with the PNC at Congress Place because of one man's foolish behavior. And I would put Joe Harmon into the mix too. You know, and firing 7,000 cane cutters. Come on, man. Where is the logic? Where is the humanity? The government was on autopilot from 2015.
So Mike, Globespan does not take a position on the election itself. And of course, your views represent that of your personal views.
Of course.
But-
I mean, I'm not going to be singled out as the lone idiot in the wilderness. Look, we got more important things. You're now the leader of the opposition. You got the role. Fulfill the role, man. Act with some magnanimity and some class. You know, and you know, let me say, we need the national service. We need to bring people together. If you don't want to call it national service, call it the One Guyana Corps.
Yes, yes.
You like that?
Yes.
I just want to point out that the matter of the elections before the courts, and I believe sometime next week there is the CCJ is going to address the matter in an appeal that was brought up from the Court of Appeal in Guyana about whether the matter, whether the election petition should be thrown out or not. And aside from that, there is also a question of a commission of inquiry into the election itself about responsibility of rigging and so on. So without attributing blame to anyone, McLean or others, I think we have to give the commission of inquiry its room to hold hearings, and then we'll have a conclusion of what happened, responsible, and those kind of things. Yeah.
Will it not end? Is there no end in sight to this? After the other, after the other, after the other, and we're not getting anywhere. We're not getting on with our job. You know, even at the what do you call it? Not the CCJ, the GCOM. We're having the same battles going on all the time, and we will never decide that this enough is enough, and let us move with it. Yeah? I understand what you're saying, that you have not taken a position, and these matters are still pending. But it seems like it's a never-ending, in my time, youngster, never-ending sweet. You know? So,
yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, let me add, Vishnu. The politics of Guyana is like a Chinese fire drill. If you've heard that expression, I'm certain the Major General knows it. It's like a Chinese fire drill.
Okay. So if we may now have the summary of your views and then summary of your views on moving forward as well. So where do you see us here today based on the protest? And I have already heard your solution to the problem of national service being one way to address the issue of
the Ethnic Relations Commission, yeah.
That and the national service.
So let's just summary. Let's first begin with the Major General. If you could summarize for us again your view of the problem and your view of the solution.
Well, we summarized the problem, which seems to be very clear that the opposition and the protesters were misguided, and I don't know why they felt that they had to bring a protest in order to bring a resolution to the issue of crime, where this guy, I don't have all the details, but he was like shot 5 or 6 times, 5 times in his back, if I'm not mistaken. Those should have been very simple matters to be resolved. So I don't want to.
And it should have been resolved expeditiously.
Yeah, that's right, correct. So that is summarizing what transpired, and I don't know why, if it is orchestrated, that these protests that started from Golden Grove had to end up at the marketplace at Monrepo, and where you had to burn, loot, steal, because I saw the photographs of people in a bicycle with a half sack of bread heading, they're going their own way. It's nonsense, you know. I mean, this is uncalled for, and I can only assume that there were other hands at work, there were other issues at work led to this disorder and what I call vulgarity. Totally unnecessary. And police should have been firmer than that. I'm not saying anybody, in all my time of the 3 years crime prevention squad, we never shot any and killed anybody. Never. Although we were very effective and were charged on many occasions, but we never killed anybody. But everything now seems to be the use of a firearm. And when you hear about some of the issues relating to the firearms, that this, other people, I don't want to prejudge the issues, but certainly these are matters which as a police force, we ought to take a very firm hand on it to ensure that these things do not continue to undermine us and to destroy the reputation of the police force. It already has a checkered thing. We had the one at Linden. So we, we need to put those away and let us cleanse our own performance so that this is cleared up and the police from now move on to a better performance and a better record. So, in my view, that is very, very important. So,
And,
finally,
and you feel the opposition politicians should
yes,
spend greater time in the community to address these issues.
that's right. And to work with the government. There's no reason why they cannot work with the government. There was a time even with Dr. Jagan where we talked about what was the terminology used is where he was cooperating with them to develop the country. We need to do that. You know,
Critical support.
critical support. That's right.
Yeah.
So Dr. Jagan did that. There's no reason why this cannot now be done by the opposition. That they will have critical support in the areas which are critical, and don't waste your time running all about and trying to perpetuate stupidity and make life difficult. So let us move on in this country. This country has a glorious opportunity. Agriculture is a big, big issue. And I remember in the days of national service, we had 4,000 acres of cotton under cultivation.
Kimbia.
Plus black eye, yes.
At papaya.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So, Mike, what's your?
Well,
I
echo many of the sentiments as the Lord Major General. I believe the Ethnic Relations Commission needed to be reconstituted ASAP. The president should not waste a single second, and he needs to get on top of this, reconstitute it. There are many Guyanese, who are respected, who have no political access to grind, who can do a professional job of being commissioners, and the ERC needs to be proactive. It needs to be functional, and not just like a museum piece. They need to actually have life. We need the national service. We can call it the One Guyana Corps to
That's
get
right.
these young people, because you can't talk about agricultural development and all living in the coastland, and the action is at Mara, Kimbia, Papaya, and these places. I know of the national services work because I was in primary school and they used to have GIS. They'll come bring these newsreels every couple of weeks and they will educate us. You will see even you were in some of those newsreels with Dr. Kenneth King.
Yes,
Visiting Papaya and Kimbia. I was about 9 or 10 years old at the time, I remember. And I was about wow.
And Mike, what's your advice to the opposition?
The opposition needs to start like behaving not as spoiled brats, but as responsible adults. Take your rightful place in the parliament if you want to regain the public's trust and respect. And start articulating and behaving in a productive manner that people say, look, man, the PNC is leading a good fight. They've put forward some good points. Guyanese was saying, I didn't know this lady was such a good debater. The PNC is in a quagmire and it needs to rebuild public trust and confidence amongst its own supporters. Because what David Granger has done to that party, let me tell you, words alone cannot express it. He is the worst thing. He was worse than the bubonic plague, in my opinion.
And if I may implore as well, whichever politician has been involved in orchestrating the violence, please cease and desist. Not only in moving forward, but in all violence.
Yeah,
In all, I'm sorry, in all protests whatsoever. Cease and desist. As you had said earlier, Mike, protest is part of the democratic process. It should not be outlawed. But those who organize protests should be very, very responsible and take responsibility.
yeah, you cannot attack. I mean, if I was out there, maybe I would have got the broomstick in my head. One person said I should go out there at Monrepo and sing Kumbaya. I mean, that was like very disrespectful. I don't support violence, and some of them accuse me because I'm preaching peace, healing, and reconciliation. They told me, oh, I'm supporting the looters. Come on. How can I be supporting the looters if I'm calling for calm and level heads to prevail? You know what happens if you let that genie out of the bottle of racial attacks and a race war? Ask the Major General. Be difficult to put it back in. He lived through it. I wasn't born in 62. I have to meet Major General and ask him over a cup of tea or coffee. Tell me about those days.
Yeah, and there should also be fair compensation and
that's the other thing.
Disability.
You were talking about paying the people who have been. You gotta take trauma into account. Yeah? They were traumatized. It's one thing to have the physical losses, but what is it for what has gone in your head?
Psyche.
Look at what I've come back to. A lot of people feel that this was past and this was no longer going to happen, and they felt comfortable. And here it is now. I am back in this nonsense.
Yeah. So yes, there should be some psychological assistance, medical assistance to the victims as well. But so, gentlemen, we are almost out of time. I want to thank you all very, very much. I thought it was a very, very good program tonight.
Thank you.
Mike and retired Major General Norman McLean, thank you for taking time out for joining us tonight. Very enlightening discourse, very analytical, and I look forward for you to join us in some future program as well. You have been watching and or listening to Globespan 24x7, owned and operated by Mr. Noah Singh. I'm Vishnu Bisram, and at the technical control tonight is Mr. Devin Bisram. Thank you again, gentlemen. Good night.
Very much. I thank you for your inputs because you made this happen tonight.
Thank you.